He is once again acclimating to a media and to a fan base and to a coaching staff that always seems extremely interested in QB2.
Crabbs and Benjamin Solak of the Draft Network here to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback conundrum. Carson Wentz ain't going anywhere. It's the unfortunate reality with the contract extension that they gave him. But Ben, this very odd Jalen Hurts pick from this past April suddenly doesn't look so crazy anymore now, does it?
Well, yes and no. Like, it doesn't look crazy if you projected this was going to happen with Wentz. But when you, as a front office, spent a ton of capital on making like a playoff-ready team, when you as a coaching staff are like, we're going to bring in a bunch of different offensive designers and we're going to modernize the offense, it doesn't look like you thought Wentz was going to fall off the face of the cliff. You know, that's the funny thing is they drafted Jalen Hurts and they were like, this implies nothing about Carson Wentz being bad. And now he's bad. And they're like, we're not going to play Jalen Hurts. It's like, all right, we get it. When you made the pick, it was just because you're big, clever with like quarterback value. But now that you've got him and the starter's bad, put him in.
Well, it was really valuable to see him get that one snap on Monday Night Football and throw his one pass attempt and then bring it right back in for Carson to take a sack and force a punt. So the big conversation piece here is Carson Wentz and the struggles that he's had this season. And the regression and the rate of regression is, I think, the most concerning part because it's literally just burning down around him offensively. So, Ben, you being so close to the Philadelphia team and following them as close as you do, I really valued your opinion on, when you look at the Carson Wentz situation. I've seen the videos that you put up on social. The construct's bad, the play is bad, the personnel's bad. Everything is bad with the Philadelphia Eagles. But is this beyond the point of return for Carson Wentz? I guess is my big question.
Right, yeah, and that's the question for everybody, right? Because there's a sunk cost fallacy, certainly, and you'd like for a front office and a coaching staff and a fan base to be mature enough to say, yes, we're paying Wentz this money, but clearly he can't be resuscitated, so we're just going to move on and we're going to swallow it. But that's we know that's not how the league works.
Right.
Yeah, his tail off statistically is historic, right? Like, I know Doug Farrar of the Touchdown Wire had a piece where he was like 5 quarterbacks have ever gone this bad QB rating one season to the next, and 4 of them retired. Like they did that and then they were done. And so you're looking at truly an unprecedented implosion. And like you said, the reality is you can't do that without help. And what that means is that you can't do that unless the personnel's bad. You can't do that unless the coaching's bad. Like it requires a team effort to stink that much that quickly. So I do believe if you took Wentz right now, lifted him up, just what he is, excised him, and just put him in a different offense, he'd be better. He certainly would. I mean, just getting out of Philadelphia, getting out of the narratives, getting away from the coaching staff with whom he has apparently a very tenuous relationship. In Philadelphia, they talk a lot about how there's no coach who really has power over Wentz. Press Taylor, the QB coach, is just big buddy with him. Oh, we're good friends. This is great. Doug Peterson doesn't have a lot of influence over what Wentz wants in the offense. Wentz has too much power with the owners, is some of the claims that have been made. So if you just took Wentz and put him in a more traditional structure in different colors, he probably would be better. With that said, every snap he takes in this terrible environment with these really tough receivers and all these bad narratives, he further ingrains what are objectively bad habits, right? I mean, his response to pressure is gone, right? He has no script. He freezes. He tries to break every tackle from every oncoming rusher. He never gets to his hot read successfully, and he takes an unbelievable amount of sacks. He's also throwing a league-leading number of interceptions. And the reason is because he's constantly bird-dogging his first read, trying to throw option routes, and is regularly off the page with his wide receivers. His accuracy is out the window because his footwork and his mechanics have regressed. So you have context-related issues that make Wentz worse, but you have objective measures of quarterback play that are defining Carson Wentz as a bad quarterback right now. Can that be resuscitated? It's very unlikely. I think it can get better. I think it can get salvaged, manageable, acceptable, permissible. But are you going to get a quarterback that elevates your team out of Carson Wentz in the future? It's very unlikely.
So one thing that's really interesting here is hearing you talk about the dynamics of the relationships within the building. And that was something that we kind of felt a little bit when Nick Foles was still there, when Nick takes over for the playoff run and helps him win the Super Bowl, and Nick starts and they have success early in the season following that. Is there any vibe that like there's any overcompensation for like what the Nick Foles relationships was, and then Nick leaves and we got to make sure Carson understands that he's the guy and he's appreciated, and this is kind of a byproduct of that?
A little bit. There's also the sensation of Jalen Hurts being drafted. And you know, there was a report right after the Hurts pick where it was like, hey, guess who's not stoked about this? Carson, right? And Carson's is a very, you know, steady as she goes. Doesn't get too low, doesn't get too high sort of a guy. And that's, you know, always been a discussion with quarterback prospects is like, how do they lead? How do they react? You think about Aaron Rodgers being pretty explicit with how he felt about the Jordan Love pick. Carson Wentz isn't that sort of a guy and doesn't communicate that way openly to the media. But behind closed doors, this guy needs wide receiver help. He's got an old offensive line, and you go ahead and you draft a quarterback at 53 overall. He was frustrated with that. You look at just the last couple of weeks, he played not his worst game, a fairly decent game against Cleveland in that losing effort. And then for the entire week, it was Jalen Hurts is getting more practice reps. Jeffrey Lurie wants Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts got first team reps. And he was god-awful against Seattle. And, of course, he didn't get benched for Jalen Hurts again. This is the third or fourth time he's had just a truly terrible game, and he hasn't gotten benched. But when you look at just that 2-week stretch and you say, all right, what changed between Cleveland and Seattle? He looked like he was, again, like salvageable against Cleveland. Well, they started talking about the guy behind him, and he's heard a lot of calls for the guy behind him during his career in Philadelphia. And so you have a player who's, firstly, still dealing with a changing athletic profile with all the injuries that he's dealt with. So it changes the way that he plays the game. And secondly, he is once again acclimating to a media and to a fan base and to a coaching staff that always seems extremely interested in QB2. And you feel as a player, man, if I were a good QB1, maybe they wouldn't care as much about this. So there absolutely are confidence issues with Carson Wentz. Rhyming and riddling those out takes a degree in psychology that I don't necessarily have. You know, there's a balance there that's tough to figure out. But there's a sensation that ownership is not as invested in him as they are in other players. There's a sensation that the coaching staff does not have a thumb on the pulse of Carson Wentz and how to boost his confidence, how to get him into a rhythm. And then there's a sensation for the second time in his career that he does not like the guy behind him. He does not like that he's there, and he's frustrated with all the narratives around him. That's not ingredients for a successful quarterback.
So that's what makes it, I think, the most frustrating when you look at this going forward, in that he's not going anywhere from a financial standpoint. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to have a change of scenery to help enlighten him and enlighten the mental taxation on him, it's going to have to come from other variables within the Eagles organization. And then at that point, you're talking about risking so many other structures and the infrastructure of your entire organization to pacify the lack of confidence in the quarterback that you just gave franchise quarterback money to on a contract extension. So this seems like a very tenuous situation here in Philadelphia, Carson.
Right, and that's why people talk about doing a full wash. Peterson gone, Roseman gone, potentially Wentz gone. Because the reality here is your priority as an organization, if you're Jeffrey Lurie, blank sheet of paper, number one, what's my goal short term? It's to get anything I can out of the Wentz deal. It's to squeeze that thing for as much juice as it's worth, because it's very difficult to get out of it, and you want to justify that transaction. Now, we talked about sunk cost fallacy a little bit, but that's kind of what you have to look at. If you're going to do that, it's clear that starting him is not helping. He's getting worse as the season goes on. And this is why people have called for a short-term benching, just to give the guy a breather, put the rookie in there. The rookie's probably going to be bad, and then you can tell Carson, hey, turns out this offense sucks and it's not 100% your fault. Like, that alone is a bit of a relief. So that short-term benching maybe just helps give him the mental break. But you may need to look at washing away with Peterson, moving on from Roseman, so that you can then turn to Wentz and say, we are investing in you as the future. You are the guy. We have faith in you. Let's build around you. Let's bring in coaching staff and we're going to build around you. Let's bring in a front office that's going to get you the talent that you need. Is that the best route to short-term success? Maybe not. But the financial investment in Roseman and Peterson is a lot easier to get out of than the financial investment in Wentz.